Honestly, I couldn't expect anything less of this fight. Not only do I think there are way better opponents for both, but if Genos, someone who by their research has no means of countering or damaging War Machine, had no hope of beating War Machine, who by their research was the exact opposite, why do this matchup? Why do this matchup when the winner was so glaringly obvious? And I know my show isn't free of this either, but at least I try to find combatants who have an edge over their opponent in some way, or at least can put up a decent fight regardless of the circumstances. There was no hope of Genos winning this one, and I know people will say Genos is no weakling. I mean, he can hold his own. I'm sorry, but to me, Genos' main gimmick is that he's the anti-Saitama, where his master is this average-looking dude who stands at a lower rank than him that can fight gods and monsters without much hassle, while Genos is a very intimidating higher-rank hero who's always getting his ass kicked just to make the One Punch Man more impressive by comparison. So really, why pit him against someone who is the exact opposite? Also, Danny Phantom vs. Jake Long should have been the fight that got the 2D treatment, not this. It does not capture the dynamic animation of One Punch Man, nor does it capture the simplicity of most Marvel cartoons nowadays. But the worst part was the fact this battle was just boring. I already knew who was going to win when it was announced just by the matchup itself. All of the hits both characters dealt had so little weight behind them, I could have sworn they were pillow boxing, and the whole fight just moved slower than it honestly should have. But to be fair, it is nowhere near the worst episode, not even close. But I know one thing, I don't need super technology or cyborg game plans to know that this fight should be left in the scrapyard.
Sorry it had to be this way.
Well, a lot of people probably expected this to be somewhere on the list, but probably not this soon. Now, this was an obvious fight that was going to happen sooner or later. It made sense. We had Mario and Sonic fight, now it's time for their sidekicks to duke it out. But my main issue stems from one a lot of other people have with this episode. Tails basically won by doing nothing. No, literally, despite Luigi having quote-unquote more combat experience, everything he did in this entire fight kept backfiring 100% of the time. Even the weapons and powers he has that should let him land at least a few good hits in, Tails somehow still gets away scot-free while Luigi is left being treated like a punching bag. And I know this may seem like me griping, especially since Tails is undoubtedly faster and could reasonably avoid most of these attacks. But here's the thing. In both Mario vs. Sonic fights, both fighters still got an equal amount of hits in. This whole battle just seemed to unfairly lean in Tails' favor all the way. If anyone's ever seen Luigi wins by doing nothing versus Tails can't die, just flip the roles of each character around and you've got this death battle in a complete nutshell. Anything Luigi did does nothing but hurt himself, while nearly everything Tails did greatly hurt Luigi. I know some people didn't like it as many saw it as a curb stomp, but at least both Kara and SCP-682 actually got some legitimately good hits on each other, instead of just 682 wailing on Kara 100% of the time. In short, if you want to see an unintentional spite match, this is the battle for you. Otherwise, it was a real kick in the side. Also, Mario Bros. 2 is not canon. Originally, I was planning on putting Scrooge McDuck vs. Shovel Knight on here. Mostly on the basis that it was a battle that I highly doubt a lot of people wanted to see. Tell me, did any of you want to see these two fight each other over Mr. Krabs or Shantae? But in all honesty, it isn't the worst perpetrator of this. In truth, I think number 8 is so guilty of this and does it so shamelessly, it might as well be like the Venom that's in it. Yup, despite people saying otherwise, this is a battle I've seen no one request in my time of watching the show. Truly a battle nobody wanted or asked for. And their reasons for having these two fight are so tenuous at best, you can honestly argue for even dumber matches. Their reason is both are characters whose lives were greatly and negatively influenced by some positive outside force in some way, and they both want it destroyed. Well, by that logic, why not have Venom fight the Grinch? After all, both of their lives were incredibly miserable due to some positive outside force, and both want to destroy those sources as well. Now, if my reasoning for Venom vs. the Grinch sounds awful and tenuous at best, then you've got enough smarts to also see the same goes for Venom vs. Bane. Both had far, far better opponents, and I've yet to meet someone who actually says they'd like to see these two fight in a researched battle. Or at least one done by death battle. But the two problems that put this on the list were two glaring ones. The first is that Bane had absolutely no hope or way of killing Venom. I'm sorry, but like I asked with Genos vs. War Machine, why would you put someone with no means of defeating their opponent against someone who had every means to defeat the former? All Bane had was fists and guns. Venom could literally counter or match any of that. But what truly made this worthy of the list was the fact you could barely see what's going on. I found myself actually having to skip back almost every second just to try and see what was going on. If you couldn't tell, they went with Venom's comic book color palette for this fight, and it really didn't do them any favors. They blend into the background far too well that it almost looks like Bane is fighting a shadow at times. It was that hard to see him. And that's disregarding how the camera movement makes it even more difficult to follow. Was it really that difficult to just use the Marvel vs. Capcom palette? Would people really get that angry? I think people care more about, seeing the characters in question over how accurate the color palette is. At least with Venom vs. Krona, not only did both have ways to keep up with and counter the other, but you could actually see what was going on. In the end, this was just a pointless battle nobody wanted to see, nor could. That was just one massive curb stomp from its very conception. And from what I hear, the version on Rooster Teeth is somehow even worse. I can't even begin to tell you how many shots of anti-venom I'll need after watching this.
Up goes the weasel!
Get the hate mail ready, because I know a lot of you are just going to say, I have this here on the list because they did it better. Not only do I think this should have been a battle that happened from the get-go 10 years ago, but I also feel like it's honestly one of the most disappointing. The whole battle felt slow, and more importantly, it felt underwhelming, as I feel like a lot of potential was wasted. These are two titans who can do pretty much anything. Why not go all Inception with it? I also really don't think the music used fits the battle of this.
I'm the king. I'm the king. Yeah, hard and bright.
I'm sorry, but when I think of two nigh omnipotent immortals with the power to destroy everything, I don't think a slow rap song is what I'd use. And I didn't! Plus, they also left out a lot of information regarding Thanos, and there were a lot of inconsistencies with the research itself. If Darkseid's true form died from Superman whistling, wouldn't a gauntlet of infinite power destroy Darkseid's true form much more easily? And yes, I know he exists outside of reality, but Thanos stated he knows the true nature of the stones. So wouldn't he already know what Darkseid is trying to do when he was goading him into his realm and refuse? Heck, Thanos wants one-shot eternity, the very embodiment of the Marvel multiverse, who is also an outerversal character like Darkseid, and took his place as all of existence because of it. I'm sorry, but I think Thanos has a lot of methods to actually keep up with Darkseid. Defeat him? Not so sure, but at least they wouldn't be downplaying the absurd power of the Infinity Gauntlet. In short, this battle had infinite possibilities, but it feels like they didn't even want to try to go for any of them. If I had the power to manipulate existence itself, this episode would be gone in a snap.
Behold, in endless death.
I am willing to bet a lot of you guys were probably expecting Goku vs. Superman 2 to appear somewhere on this list. I'm sorry to disappoint, but it won't. My reasoning is because it only has one issue: them using 2 new Super Saiyan forms before we knew anything about them. The other issues it has can be traced directly back to the first. Now, to be fair, the episode has great animation that still holds up even today. Or maybe because their newer 3D battles look like shit. And to be even more fair, it was not just the only research Goku vs. Superman fight when it was released, but it was an absolutely massive event. The most debated battle of a generation coming to life. I am also willing to bet it was this episode that got them on the map. But that's where the positives end. Given what we know about Goku now, and with GT no longer canon, this episode is horrifically outdated. And hey, even their power scaling is so bad, it's blatantly obvious. Not to mention, they overplay Superman so much in this fight. I am sorry, but Superman is not limitless. They'll happily look at the Daisenshu but ignore similar books for Superman that contradicts their own research. How about you stop doing theories and power scaling and actually listen to what Superman's actual writers have to say for once? Now, I will acknowledge Superman is stronger than Goku, or at least he was back in the day. But just because Superman is stronger than Goku, it doesn't mean it guarantees him victory. There's more to a battle than just brute force alone, and Goku's basically made a career at defeating opponents who are leagues more powerful than him at this point. And while Goku is in character for most of the fight, Superman is not. He is more in line with his portrayal in injustice in this fight than he is with the Superman most people are familiar with. He is willing to destroy an entire planet of innocents and Goku without as much of a second thought. At times, it even feels like he eggs Goku on instead of actually trying to stop the battle like, Superman would to keep his city from being destroyed.
You think this is a game? I haven't even begun to play.
Now, I personally do think Superman himself is a boring character in the main DC continuity, and his most interesting appearances are his one-off or Elseworld stories. But I don't think portraying Superman with little care about collateral damage, the certain loss of human life, and an odd desire to fight like Goku does, is how I'd portray Superman. Plus, Masako X as Goku is very distracting. I know people love his portrayal of the character, but his Goku is completely different from the canon one as it's a parody of the character.
I am the Super Saiyan Son Goku!
And I am a Super Saiyan!
And those who haven't seen Dragon Ball Z Abridged would just be confused as to why he sounds like this. I know this battle was one of the biggest fights they've done, and it was a huge event back in the day. But oh boy! By today's standards, this battle is anything but super.
You're insane!